Hello everyone and welcome back to BYOD. Today we'll be speaking with Stephen Kessler, director of a very unique documentary, a music film called Paul Williams Still Alive. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Stephen Kessler shot onto the scene with an Oscar-nominated short film in 1991 called Birch Street Gym. 2 pre-scripted actor feature films later, he's back on the scene with a fantastic new documentary about the musician Paul Williams. Please welcome Stephen Kessler. Hey.
Thank you. Shot onto the scene. That's
shot on.
That's a warning to people who would try to shoot onto a scene.
Is it a warning?
Is it? Well, it only took 20 years to do something else as good as that. So it was. So it's never good to shoot on. It's always good to ease your way in. Which
you actually refer to in your documentary.
I do, yeah.
You show us a brief sort of look down memory lane.
Yeah, I sum up my career in about 30 seconds. I sum up about 20 years of work in about 30 seconds, which I thought that given that I was asking Paul to be so honest about his life, that at some point I really had to be really honest about my life and my work to give the audience some kind of context for who I was and what I was talking about.
You know, it's funny you mention that because I've always felt that way too, that the way, in fact, a great technique in making a documentary is to be as open about yourself as possible. There's a ghost in the studio.
Oh dear.
Yesterday we had a car alarm.
Really?
So yeah, we have these awesome sound
I
effects.
don't worry, you know, I never worry about sounds from anywhere.
Well, in fact, you decided to make your first feature-length documentary about a songwriter and a musician.
Yes.
Who I had never heard of, quite to admit.
That's not unusual.
Is that it, really?
Yeah, no, I think there's, if I may be so complimentary, under a certain age, people haven't heard of Paul Williams, but they kind of know some of his songs, like they'll either know The Rainbow Connection or Evergreen or We've Only Just Begun. They've kind of heard the songs. And, you know, that's kind of why I made the film. I don't know if I'm getting into the discussion sideways, but that is why I made the film, because when I realized that, I kind of found out by accident that Paul Williams wasn't dead anymore. I went to buy one of his albums online one night. And when I found out he wasn't dead, I was like, wow, that's an amazing subject for a documentary, that this guy is still out there somewhere. Because you thought he was dead and you thought most people assumed he was dead, or? Well, I was a huge Paul Williams fan when he was, when I was a kid. You know, he wrote these songs about alienation and depression and loneliness, and I didn't understand that's why I was hooking into the songs, but that's why I was hooking into the songs. And also he was kind of overweight and I was a fat little kid. And so I just loved that he was out on Carson and he was out on, you know, besides The Tonight Show, he was on game shows and that kind of stuff. He was on The Odd Couple. And so I always really wished I could be Paul Williams. I mean, in time, I kind of forgot about who Paul Williams, I forgot about him. He kind of fell off my radar. But when just by chance I found out that he wasn't dead and he was alive, I was like, wow, I think that would be really interesting to see someone who was once one of the most famous people in America now just kind of going to the store and getting his own toothpaste. Was he really that famous? I mean, I was kind of amazed, and your film starts by introducing youth like myself. And for all our youth viewers out there, I think we should roll a clip of an introduction of sorts that you created to Paul Williams. Because I just can't imagine that everybody knew him in America, but there he was on Carson time after time. Yeah, amazing, 50 times on Carson. Yeah, let's go to a clip.
I always thought he died too young.
What I've got, they used to call the blues.
Some people probably don't even remember him now, but in the 70s, he was one of the biggest songwriters there was. He wrote hits for The Carpenters, Three Dog Night, Helen Reddy, David Bowie, lots of people.
Some kind of lonely cloud.
But he was more than just a songwriter, he was also this huge celebrity. Every year he was up for an Oscar or a Grammy or Emmy or something, and he was always guest hosting or guest starring somewhere.
Mr. Paul Williams!
When I was a kid, I really wanted to be Paul Williams. Yeah, he had a bit of a weight problem, but so did I. And this guy was a real sex symbol. He gave me hope.
Oh, one of our favorite
Paul was short and nobody's idea of a leading man, but he didn't care. He made it work for him. Paul was funny. He was on The Tonight Show 50 times, and he wrote the music for films like Bugsy Malone.
So, I mean, it seems to me that one of the things that's most compelling about him is that is not only how he looks, you know, so tiny and so just in these three-piece suits, you know, just an incredible rock star, but like a little tiny rock star, but also his sense of humor.
Well, yeah, I mean, Paul existed in a time of American culture where you didn't have to look like Justin Bieber to be Justin Bieber. Paul was like the Justin Bieber guy, but plus he was an amazing songwriter. So people just really loved the guy, and as a kid, I really loved him. So. Yeah, I mean, when you imagine at his height, he was on The Tonight Show a dozen times in the same year. Think about if anybody's on The Tonight Show 12 times a year now, or on Letterman, and also there were only like 3 television channels. There were 4 radio stations in your town. So when somebody was on The Tonight Show, the next day everybody had seen him because everybody watched The Tonight Show. There wasn't that many different outlets for celebrities.
He says he was walking down the street and somebody says, "Great job last night." What a surreal feeling.
Yes, he walked in New York City after the night he did The Tonight Show from building to building. Like all the doormen were going, "Hey, Mr. Williams, hey, great job last night. Hey, you were funny last night." Yeah. It's
quite a taste for someone like that. But they say never meet your idols if you want to keep them as idols. So how was that for you?
Well, you know, I always felt I've worked around a lot of celebrities, and I don't really care too much about celebrity, but I was very nervous around Paul. I was nervous meeting him. I was even nervous calling him, like months into it. But the thing was, as I got to know him a little bit, what I started to see was that he was kind of so zen about who he was now. He didn't have a lot of the qualities that I preconceived that he might have. You know, like he didn't miss the spotlight. He wasn't like looking for fame. And I started really thinking, you know, this guy who's in front of me right now is a much more interesting person to make a film about than that guy that I liked when I was a kid. The guy I liked when I was a kid is interesting, but this guy is really interesting because he had seemed to come to peace with some issues about happiness and inner peace in his own life. There were things that I was really interested about for my life too.
And you were also interested in, as you say in the film, or maybe this was something you just wrote later, in making something that you hoped would elevate your career out of just the doldrum of celebrity culture, commercials, that kind of thing? Was that part of the motivation?
Yeah, I had been, you know, nobody minds a day's work, but at the same time I had done just about all the fun things I could do in commercials, and I had made studio films and I made independent films, and I was just, when I started this, I was just kind of looking for something interesting to do, and I just thought it would be a really unique, let me put it this way, there was nobody saying, hey, I want to also make a documentary about Paul Williams. So it was wide open. Right. It was wide open.
Except that you were really nervous. I mean, not only was was a subject who didn't necessarily want to go back in the spotlight, but he's rarely, it seemed that from the film that he was rarely playing shows out. He's a bit of a recluse. Here he had written all these songs about alienation, so you've got a tough nut to crack. You're not sure if you're quite welcome.
Well, the thing is, he wasn't a recluse. He was just a guy to be happy waking up in the morning and going eating breakfast at the diner and playing golf and hanging out with friends, and he just didn't particularly care if I was there or not. Right. You know, so that was, you know, as a filmmaker, you know, it's hard enough to do everything you need to make a film, to have the idea, to get the crew, to get the money, to get whatever crap you need, right? But when you add to that, your subject isn't that crazy about having you around, it's a real downer at the end of the day. You know, it's like, oh, shit, I gotta like call this guy again next week and see if he wants to see me next week. And so,
that was,
feel bad. It was kind of a drag. And also I wanted Paul Williams to like me. I mean, I liked him when I was a kid. I wanted him to like me a little bit.
Yeah, it was like your childhood hero.
So yeah, so that is, so anyway, as I really started out to make a very standard documentary, where are they now kind of thing, like something that could run on VH1.
Right.
And as I started editing the film together, well, first of all, as I was filming the film, Paul kept saying to me, you should come be on camera with me. And I would never be on camera with him, but once in a while I would be on camera with him just so he'd feel like I was doing what he told me, just so I could get another hour of filming.
Oh yeah, absolutely. To break down that wall and you know, like we started when we started this interview. I mean, you know, be open.
Right,
subject
exactly.
yourself to the same things as your subject, and often it'll pay off.
Yeah.
But let's look at, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's look at
you know, I love getting ahead of myself, Andy. That's the best thing I like.
And I love reeling people back.
Okay,
in.
good.
So we're compatible. We're gonna have a great time.
Oh, it's so nice.
I know. So let's look at what inspired you to make the film, and also just kind of approaching Paul Williams. And this is one of the funniest moments in doc editing that I've ever seen. So watch carefully.
I was sure that Paul Williams was a great subject for a film. I just had to convince him of that. I memorized all the arguments in my head because I didn't want to look back later and wished I said something else. Okay, it isn't going to take a lot of time. He wouldn't notice I'm around. This could be great for his career. But then I thought, oh, I don't know this guy or how he'll react.
Oh, Steve Kessler.
I got really nervous around him.
Yes.
As I watched him wheel his own overnight bag to the self-service line at the airport, I thought, you know what I could do? I could make one of those PBS documentaries about him.
Paul Williams was born in Omaha, Nebraska. As a small child, his family would move from town to town, his 6'2" father working in construction on large government projects. At night, the man would drink and make his young son sing Danny Boy, promising to take him to a ball game.
We're driving like at 4 or 5 in the morning through this horrific rainstorm, and my dad is like, you know, we're gonna see the professional over his shoulder talking to me, and I'm like, don't watch me, Dad, watch the road. You know, it was...
I'm gonna skip around a little bit, but do you remember being entered into talent shows?
So we're interrupting this meaningful conversation about my dad taking me to this ball game to talk about talent shows.
No, but also the reason I'm doing that is because
No, but I want you to put this in the film, because that's this conversation that we're having right now is more important than the story of the talent shows or the...
Yeah, well, I know.
It's okay, talent shows. When I was about 8 or 9, they gave me shots to make me grow. They gave me male hormone because I was really tiny. Actually, what they did was the wrong thing to do because it closes off the bones and they stop growing. So that's one of the reasons that I'm as short as I am. The voice got deeper. I started singing.
There is so much to dig into in that clip.
Yeah. Where should we start?
Okay, we're going to start with you, including yourself, and the process of filmmaking.
Right.
In the film. Right? That was a direct order that Paul said, I want this. I want you interrupting me in the film, but you've got a VO that's going throughout the film where you're really taking us on the ride. I almost felt like I was watching Nick Broomfield in a way.
Well,
you know?
Well, you know, there's this whole thing where I'm first of all, coming to it, I'm not really a big fan of like when the director puts themselves in the film. That could go horribly wrong. But as I started to edit together a very conventional documentary about Paul Williams and showing it to some of my really talented filmmaking friends, they started saying to me, you don't understand. The most interesting and compelling and weirdest and most fucked up part of this whole thing is that you're chasing this guy around whose career is dead and he doesn't want you there. That's an interesting thing to make a movie about. And so that's when we started playing with me putting myself into the film. And then my editor, David Zeef, who edited, he did Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, and he did Crazy Love. Zeef started looking at things and he started saying, you know, all this stuff that is processed that normally you would cut out of a film, that's all the stuff we should put in put in this film. And that's when I started thinking about telling my story as honestly as possible. You know, when I first started editing it, I even had these stupid things in my head like, gee, I don't even know where to put, whose name do I super and whose name don't I super? And actually, I watched No Direction Home, the Scorsese documentary about Dylan. And what I realized watching that film was that Scorsese just did whatever the fuck he wanted to do. If he wanted to put up a title, he did. If he didn't, he wanted to cut, he cut. If he wanted to skip 10 years, he skipped. So I realized that really there didn't have to be any rules in how I put the documentary together. And once I did all that, it really kind of gave me the freedom to make a film that was interesting to me and fortunately interesting to other people.
And where did you get those clips when you cut to the PBS movie?
I got those clips from No Direction Home from the Scorsese documentary. Yeah, I thought it was it was an homage.
It was an homage.
Yeah,
a fair use homage.
It was a fair use homage. Blessed by Michael Donaldson, the attorney who I believe has been on your very show.
He has indeed.
Yeah.
So you ran it by him. Did you run everything by him?
I did I also kind of have a long time relationship with the legendary sales agent Jeff Dowd, who
is legendary. Let's just mention for everybody out there why he's legendary.
Well, Jeff Dowd is best known as the Dude. He sold Blood Simple for the Coen Brothers, and then they immortalized a character based on him, which became the Dude, and everybody now knows Dowd as the Dude. But Dowd is a very brilliant guy, and I hadn't seen him in like 6 or 7 years, literally. And I was editing my film really early on in the process, and I ran into him at a Starbucks. I just went out to get a coffee. And it was one of these things. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm editing a film about Paul Williams." He said, "Great, let me see it." So we went right from the Starbucks.
That's him exactly, by the way.
Came to the editing bay, and he watched about 15 minutes, and he said, "There's a guy named Michael Donaldson, and he helped to write the fair use laws in this country, and he's the lawyer you have to get. And here's his number. Call him right now. Tell him I told you to call him." So I called Donaldson, and I brought him a cut of the film, and he watched it, and he said, "It's films like this that the fair use law was written to protect." And so, yeah, I will represent the film and help you. So.
And why do you think he said that?
Why do I think he said that?
Yeah, why is it films like yours?
It's a lot of films, but my film in particular has a lot of film clips, a lot of clips from movies and TV shows, and a lot of different music that there's no way a documentary filmmaker could ever afford to go out and get the rights to all these things. And basically what the fair use law does, and I'm sure people that watch your show know this, but it helps you to take existing works of art and other pieces and mash them together and make a new work of art out of them. Mm-hmm. And I guess the law in a nutshell says that if you are making a new work of art, then you are allowed to, if the benefit to the citizenry at large is bigger than the harm to the rights holder, then you're allowed to use a little piece of these different pieces of work.
And do you think that without those pieces of work you couldn't tell Paul Williams' story?
Oh yeah, it would be impossible.
That's the key, one of the key elements.
Yeah, there's no way you would be able to understand the ride Paul Williams took without seeing all this stuff.
Now, tell me about his wife. How was she in relation to you while you were filming, and where did she come on the scene in his life? I don't know if I missed that in the film, for it just wasn't in the film. He was a playboy when you were in love with him, right?
Well, he was a playboy, married and unmarried during the years that I was in love with him. You know, the reason that you have a little question about it now is because I made this decision that I wasn't going to do a lot of things that are done in standard biography documentaries. I wasn't going to talk about, I wasn't going to ask him stuff like, where did all your money go? Because everybody knows what it's like when everybody goes through shitty times in their life, and they know what it's like to go through shitty times. A lot of people know what it's like to have a relationship go really bad and what it feels like. So I didn't I wanted to kind of hopscotch those standard questions. Anyway, his wife in the film, his wife Mariana, who Paul's been married to, I think 5 or 6 years now, is a great person, was very, very protective of Paul when I met Paul. You know, even after I filmed him in Canada, the second time I saw him in San Francisco, he made me come out to breakfast with him and Mariana, where Mariana would say to me, now, why do you want to make this film? Why are you doing this? You must want to make my husband look like an idiot. She said that without saying it. Always very protective of him. But, you know, as life rolled on and I rolled more into Paul's life, there were times where, for instance, he booked a gig in Las Vegas and he was driving to Vegas. And I said, hey, can I drive with you to Vegas? And he said, yeah. And Mariana was in the car. And it turned out that Mariana, who used to book comedians and singers in different places, booked the gig for Paul in Vegas, which became kind of an interesting story point. So I tried to keep Mariana's portrayal in the film as honest as it was in real life. I could actually tell you, if we have a moment, a really interesting story about Mariana.
This is our moment.
Yes.
Tell me. Please tell me.
So when we first looked at cut of the film, I told Paul when I first met him, which was 5 years from the time it took me to get to a cut, I thought it was going to be like a little 10-month job for me.
Well, that's the trick. That's the doc trick.
But that's what everybody says when they make it. It takes you years and years.
But you never would start if you knew, right?
It's a terrible way to make a living.
I mean, if you had been asked, would you have started?
No.
I mean, if somebody said it would take 5 years?
No, I never would have done it.
Okay. Regret it now?
But do I regret it? No, it's the greatest thing that I've done. Would I make another documentary? No. I would not. I mean, look, there's one or two things that interest me. There are things that interest me. I'm going
to check back with you in a couple of years when you're bored again.
It's been a wonderful short career, and I've had a very nice time. But I don't need to do it anymore. You know,
that's what we all say.
You think so? You know,
I do. I know so.
Oh no.
I vow regularly not to make documentaries.
Don't tell me that. Well, so anyway. When I got started with Paul, I said to him, if there's anything in the end in this film that you don't like, I'll take it out. Now, the reason I said that to him, no filmmaker wants to say that, but I said that not only because I knew that was the only way he'd let me make it, but because there was something that was so honest in Paul's music that I kept inside me. I just had a feeling that he would be okay with me making a really honest film, even though I didn't know exactly what that film was going to be. Okay, so now it's 5 years later. I show him and Mariana the film. It's over. Paul's crying. Mariana says, I love the film, I gotta go. She leaves. Paul says to me, you don't have to change anything in the film, but I don't like the way my wife is portrayed in the film. I don't like, and I go, well, she's really protective of you. And he goes, no, no, no. She's probably in her car crying right now. And I want you to call her, and I want you to see for yourself. And you know, I love Mariana. I wouldn't want to do anything to hurt Mariana in you know, while trying to make an honest film. So I called her up and I go, hey Mariana. She's like, hey, wow, you know, I thought the film, I really liked it. And I said, well, do you want me to re-edit the film to make you nicer or funnier? And she said to me, Stephen, if you make a film about me, you can make a film that's nice. You can make me nicer or funnier in that film. But in this film, I love the way I am and I love the film, and you don't have to change anything in this film for me. So that was amazing. And because she said that, Paul kind of got off that, and everything was cool after that.
I'm sure
and
he
of
heard
course,
that the second he walked out of the room with you. She was like, no, 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 that's not why I left. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. But as you know, there are things in this film that are very embarrassing to Paul, and potentially things that somebody who was not in the same place in their life might really want to pull out a film, and he didn't ask to pull out any of them.
What do you think? I mean, I didn't actually feel that there was that much that was embarrassing to Paul. I mean, I'd love to show another clip. You referred to the San Francisco show. Yeah. And I actually think that, and as you may know, I've filmed a lot of musicians in my short years on the planet. I love that you suggested I was young. It's beautiful. Yes. But I have done a lot of filming of musicians. Is it the haircut? I don't know if it's the jewelry, but something about you. Thank you, darling.
Your aura, I don't, it's, you know.
Yeah, this could be my energy. Yeah. At any rate, so I've never seen a musician be as elegant in cutting filming or destroying a filmmaker's, potential shoot as Paul is in this clip. And I just think it's fun from a filmmaker's perspective to look at how you handle it. Another funny moment from Stephen Kessler.
That's just an old-fashioned love song, one I'm sure they wrote for you and me.
Wait a minute, before we do this, wait a minute. I have to tell you that, in addition, you notice the lights are a little bright because they're filming this tonight. I think maybe we should probably bring the house lights down a little bit and cancel any recording tonight. Thank you for your patience and your tolerance.
Paul knew that if he brought the lights down, I wouldn't be able to film. As a fan, I understood. But as a filmmaker, I thought, night vision.
Like fools before me, I always think with my heart.
I told myself that it wasn't really clear whether Paul was having second thoughts or not, and that I should just keep shooting.
That's right. Come on, guys, that's enough. That's fabulous.
I needed to get some insight into who Paul really was.
You're so welcome.
So anyway. So I went to talk to his band leader of 30 years, Chris Caswell.
There's a lot of things that happened that I can go back and say, yeah, that was not a cool thing, and that was not a cool thing. And then there's other things that they're just not worth talking about, It's like, are we out here to make the documentary about Paul, or are we out to, dish the dirt? Because I don't want to do that. So there you go.
I thought he just hated me, but Kaz had another reason for being sensitive. When Paul was at the height of his fame, Kaz was the only one who confronted him about his drug problem. What did Paul do? He fired him.
He's funny. We're going to get to him. That's
Kaz,
amazing.
yeah.
But what did Paul say when he saw that scene? I mean,
you know what, Paul, he was so in shock by the way I put the film together. I don't know what he was expecting, but that was just one more thing that he just laughed when he saw it. He was okay with it. I mean, he didn't expect me to put any of the laryngitis stuff in the film. Now for me, that was the second day I had ever physically met him. And that was when I was still spending, I had spent $5,000 that day to bring up a couple of PAs and this and a sound guy. It was before I really even knew how to use the little camera. After a while, I was just jumping in the car. I was out of money and out of, doing it myself. But at this point, I still had a crew on the clock. And for him to say, hey, shut it all off and cancel it, it was just like unthinkable. So there was this whole real game of cat and mouse with me and Paul for a long time that really, the night vision thing, that was just like the easiest physical showing of what was going on between me and Paul.
I love it. He not only goes from, full color with laryngitis, but he goes to Kermit Green with laryngitis. So that's what he gets for trying to cancel the filming.
Exactly, but again.
But I was just wondering if he found that.
No,
funny. I would think he would find that.
You know what?
Really...
To his credit, he just looked at me and said, "I can't believe you're going to put me in this film with laryngitis."
Yeah.
But as he watched the whole film, the gestalt of the piece, so to speak, kind of took over, and he was okay with that.
And some of the fans that you filmed, are crying, shedding tears, real tears. This guy has meant so much to them that it's more about the songwriting than it is ever about his voice, it seems like.
Well, the fans, the film, the first night I ever went to see Paul, it was at an event in Winnipeg, where he was performing as part of a tribute to this film, Phantom of the Paradise, which he starred and wrote the music for. It was a musical. It was Brian De Palma's first or second film. And what I saw there were fans who were so connected to Paul's work, it just like a kind of time machine sucked me back to when I had those feelings about Paul. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not the only one who feels this way about this guy. And that's why it's worth making a movie about him. As I was getting back to the thing about when you make a documentary, there don't have to be any rules. as I started filming, I realized I really couldn't give a shit less about talking to anyone famous who had, you know, usually when you do a music documentary, you go and you talk to all the people he worked with. You go, in this case, I would get Willie Nelson and get Barbra Streisand and get Chris Christopherson to say, oh, he was so funny, and get Warren Beatty or Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? The people that I really care about are just regular people, and how Paul affected their lives. And so that became a decision in the structure of the film also.
Yeah, it makes logistics easier too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
it
it is, but we have seen so much of that. And,
Right.
and I'm wondering, when you're making and going about making a music documentary, there are so many, and there's so many that are spoofs on the genre itself at this point, you know?
Yeah.
What were you looking at as reference? What did you like or not like? What are your favorite music documentaries?
My favorite music documentary is the one that Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll that Taylor Hackford made about Chuck Berry.
Okay.
Because that is such an honest portrayal of who Chuck Berry is, and who, unintentionally honest, and who Keith Richards is. In the past couple of years, I intentionally didn't watch, you know, music documentaries. You know, the Devil and Daniel Johnston. I mean, I thought that was a great documentary. And my other really favorite music documentary is Let's Get Lost, about Chet Baker, that Bruce Weber did. But I love the documentaries about people that I love, are documentaries like Crumb, that take
I love that film.
Yeah, take you very real, into a very real place, into a person's life where they never really expected the camera to take the audience, and that's really what I tried to do here, which you know, for the most part, critics have been very kind to the film, but you know, some people were like, gee, I wish there was more about Bugsy Malone in the film, or how come Steve didn't spend more time talking about the Carpenters in the film? But my feeling is that really, it wouldn't be an interesting film, and it wouldn't really, it really wouldn't show you who Paul is. I mean, it's like, if you're so fucking interested in who Paul is after you see the film and you think I did such a bad job, go and read about the Carpenters. You know.
What were you ultimately trying to say, do you think, about Paul Williams and who he is?
Well,
I mean, by the time you finished filming, did you say, okay, I'm done. My portrait, I have all the elements for the portrait now.
Yeah. What I really started to see in Paul is that all the things that you think you require to have a happy life, I don't know what you think you require to have a happy life, but they're really worth.
Well, let me tell you.
Let me start with the simple things.
Okay.
But whatever it is that you think you need, it's really worth examining, because you may not need the things you think you need, and as hackneyed as it sounds, what you need to have a happy life, you may already have around you. It could be like really simple things. It could be, you know, your kid, or it could be the fact that you like watching ants walk across the ground. I don't know what it is, but it may not be the things that you're chasing, and that's what I got out of hanging out with Paul.
Did he ever tell you that fame was really important to him in the beginning?
Yeah, he says it in the film. He says that he thought fame would make him
taller.
Would make him taller.
I think that's what he says.
He says that fame didn't bring him up to here. It only brought him up to where everybody else was.
Oh.
But also he said, when Paul grew up, he was, I think, 4'6" when he graduated high school. He was always really small, and he was always moving around from town to town. And he said you were always different, and fame made you less different and more special. That's what he thought it was going to bring to him.
And he says to be different is difficult, to be special is addicting.
Is addicting.
That's like the best quote, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That completes your portrait of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's look at one last clip from your movie. This is where Paul breaks through and really makes himself a regular on the Carson Show.
Great.
Richard, it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
I know, but Mom, listen, that song could be a hit.
Here, take one of these.
What is it?
Something called Quaaludes to help you sleep.
Sharing horizons that are new to us.
To be in the car and hear one of your songs on the radio. I mean, you turn it up and you want to turn to the people in the car next to you and go,
Talking it over, just the two of us.
Karen singing that song just resonated with an entire generation, and it became the wedding song of the 70s. When you have a hit of the magnitude of We've Only Just Begun, it changes your life.
Paul Williams is with us tonight. He's one of the bright young composers in the music business today. Some people say he's the very best. Some people say he's the shortest. But he's gained a lot of recognition.
And the first time it was just like, wow, I'm going to be on the Tonight Show. And you're really nervous, and you go out and you sing, and it was the show.
Please, Paul Williams.
And I was a huge fan of Johnny Carson's. The world was. Everybody's watching.
Whenever I need to leave it all behind, or feel the need to get away, I find a quiet place far from the human race, out in the country, before the breathing air is gone, before the sun is just a bright spot in the nighttime, out where the rivers like to run. I stand alone, I take back something worth remembering. Bless you.
And he called me over to do panel, and this can be a career-changing moment. You can go out there and really screw up, or you can be great.
How have you been?
I've been all right.
Yeah.
I'm aging. Boy, would I like a cigarette.
You smoke also?
Do I smoke?
Yes.
I didn't get to be 5'2" by doing laps in the morning.
I had lunch the next day at the New York Athletic Club. Walking to the athletic club as I'm going by hotels, doormen are going, nice show last night. Hey, nice show. Hey, kid, good work last night. Hey, you were funny last night.
Paul Williams is with us tonight. He's a very talented performer and songwriter and composer. He's one of the most successful composer lyricists around today.
It was that moment when all of a sudden, everybody knew who I was.
Would you welcome, please, Paul Williams? Would you welcome Paul Williams? Paul Williams.
Paul Williams.
Paul Williams.
Paul Williams. I love you too. And later on, in person.
Did you ever go to like the carnival and there was a chicken that would play the piano and then a thing of corn would come down? That's the piece of corn right there. The piece of corn is Johnny laughing. Somebody that the entire world loves is laughing at my jokes. There's a big difference between being special and being different, you know, and I think that that's a pursuit that began for me back when I was 4 or 5. To be different is difficult. To be special is addicting.
That's awesome. That's how, I mean, it's important. It's really, that's it in a nutshell of why you couldn't make the movie without these clips.
Yeah.
And you were just telling me that the Carson Foundation was really helpful to you after seeing your dedication to the story for so many years.
Yeah, amazingly helpful and amazingly generous in what they gave me. I mean, I don't even know if they want me to say how generous they were, but they really gave me the opportunity to show what the Carson Show looked like when it looked good, you know. So that was really nice of them.
And so you premiered the movie at South by Southwest, and then
I
thought that was the premiere.
No, premiered the film at Toronto.
Ah, okay, and then played.
Now it gives you a whole new feeling about me, doesn't it?
No, no, actually.
Oh, okay, good.
I don't know. I thought it was South by because it was a music film, but
no.
That was your U.S. premiere.
Yeah, South by was the U.S.
Fantastic.
premiere. The world premiere was at Toronto last year, and it was that was a really amazing experience because the festival opened up with a documentary about U2, I think. And also there were docs there about Neil Young and about Pearl Jam, and there was another big music doc there too. And then there was like this little weird music documentary about Paul Williams that nobody was really tracking and nobody knew about. And it just kind of, when the press discovered that Paul was there, they really kind of descended on him. And all of a sudden, that combined with reviews that the film was getting, the film kind of started to blow up a tiny bit there.
Well, he's Canadian, yeah?
No. He's
not.
He grew up in Nebraska.
He's loved, that's right, I should have remembered that.
But beloved,
he's loved in Canada. You keep filming in Canada.
He's beloved in Winnipeg. The film Phantom of the Paradise.
Winnipeg, he's big in Winnipeg.
Well, the film Phantom of the Paradise was a hit, was bombed all over the world, except for some reasons it was a big hit in Paris and in Winnipeg, where it played in like 1973 or 74. It played for over 50 weeks in both cities. So, excuse me, in Winnipeg he's very big. You know, you move to Ottawa, he's not as hot. But in Winnipeg, he's very big, Paul Williams. So you know, so
in Toronto they couldn't care less.
No,
that's Ontario.
But the great thing is that there are so many people that connect to Paul in so many different ways, either through the Muppets or through Phantom, or through, there are people that are like crazy Ishtar fans, you know, like Edgar Wright is a huge fan of Bugsy Malone. Quentin is a really big fan of Ishtar. So people connect with Paul in all these different ways. And one of the really nicest things for me, and I think for him, is when we got to Toronto, nobody was like, where have you been all this time? What have you been doing? There were no questions like that. It was just journalists saying, hey man, it's really nice to see you, and I want to ask you about this. Which for me was really nice.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then you went to South by.
And then after that we went to South by.
Okay. And did
we went to IDFA in the middle.
Oh, I love IDFA.
Yeah, IDFA.
I'm going to be on the jury this year.
Oh, that's a wonderful place to be on the jury.
25th anniversary.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so nice. In Amsterdam, you know, they have a cheap beer and other things there.
I know.
And they have
for a week.
They have waffle fries around the city.
And they have other things.
Priced. And other things, yes.
Bicycles.
Yes, and
is
bicycles.
What I was referring
yes.
to. So you went to IDFA, and then you went to South by. This is great. I mean, you're living the independent film dream in one film. No wonder you can hang up documentary filmmaking. You hit all the best festivals.
And by the way, they have public urinals that they wheel out only at night for the
drunk people,
the residents of Amsterdam. It's a very well thought out city.
I never saw those, and I've been up late in Amsterdam. I missed those somehow. Do they have female urinals?
This trip? No. They're standing only. They don't. The women don't need them. The women know not to pee on the streets. But okay. Anyway, let me get back to this. So yeah, I've been really fortunate in getting to do a lot of really great stuff. We went to Toronto, then to Amsterdam, then to South by Southwest. We did a lot of regional festivals, you know, from Cleveland to Seattle, all over the country,
Seattle's
Nashville,
great.
and
Nashville's great
all over the place. And we're about to like kind of finish it off, going to some more international places, to Norway and to Taiwan and to Buenos Aires. And
fantastic.
So yeah, I mean,
and you're a single dad.
I am
raising a boy.
Yes, raising two sons.
Two sons.
Right, Benny? Is that true? What? No, see, there it is.
Do you get to take them at all?
Yeah, my sons have come with me to places like Toronto and to South by, to Austin, and they don't get everywhere with me, but I try to get them to the more interesting places.
Yeah, that's one of the great boons of being an independent filmmaker. You get to show your kids the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's also like one of the balances for the fact that a lot of time, for how much you work, and a lot of time you're not around your kid and you miss certain things that other parents just take for granted and get to do, is that you get to go to film festivals and your kids understand why you're sitting in a dark room for a year in a row, and they think, okay, my
Father's Not Crazy.
Yes.
Here's a bunch of people clapping and enjoying this.
Exactly,
and,
the clapping helps.
Well, Stephen, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show.
You're
I hope you
welcome.
don't
Thank
leave
you for having
documentaries.
me.
We need more humor in our art form, and
Okay.
you bring that. So just, you know, rest
Maybe
up.
there's if you have
Rest up for the next journey.
Okay, I will.
And where can we track the film online?
The film online, you could go to paulwilliamsstillalive.com, and
Okay.
people could go to our Paul Williams Still Alive Facebook page.
And if you're not in Taiwan,
like it,
and you're not in Norway,
yes, it's going to be.
Can we see the film?
Starting in late September, it's going to be on iTunes, and then after that, it's going to be on demand on your television starting the beginning of October.
Okay. Thanks so much for coming on
Thanks,
BYOD.
Andy. It was so nice of you to have me.
It was my pleasure. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next time.